All right. We are moving right along. This is episode number 3 on opportunity knocking. Woohoo! Not quite as much of a delay. I just hit the button a little earlier this time. Anyway, my name is Seth. Thanks for coming back. Glad that you were able to join in here today and watch what we have to talk about. Last week, kind of talked about how to get started and the different things we're going to take into account, right? Because every single person is going to have a little bit different answer about how to get started in real estate. And then I said that this week I wanted to talk about a couple of different niches, right? And just different choices that you may have chosen. I think it's important when we talk about a niche. I like to base it around what you're going to do with the property, what the exit of the property is, right? Are you going to sell the property or are you going to hold the property? It's the two basic ones, right? Then you can dive down just a little bit more into, are you going to sell the property to another investor or somebody that's not going to live in the property, somebody that's going to manage the property, somebody that's going to renovate the property, somebody that's just not going to be the end buyer? Or are you going to sell it to somebody who is the end buyer that wants to live there for the next 5 years, 10 years, the rest of their life, whatever it happens to be, right? A homeowner. So those are three niches that I want to talk about. We'll kind of break up each one of them. And some of them overlap into the different strategies that people talk about, like fix and flips, or buying holds, or wholesaling, or novations, or whatever it happens to be, right? So instead of focusing on, I want to just do wholesale. Uh, I do wholesale, I fix and flip, I buy and hold. I I consider myself to be an investor, an entrepreneur. I don't consider myself as a flipper or a landlord or a wholesaler or anything like that. I consider myself an investor and an entrepreneur. Um, I look at a deal that comes across my table on the different exit strategies that could be possible. It's subject to creative financing, right? There's so many different ways to acquire properties and to dispose of properties that it can get to be a little bit of information overload. But if you think about it in the simple aspect of what are you going to do once you have that property? Are you going to sell it to somebody that's going to live there forever? Are you going to sell it to somebody that's going to do a value add of their own? Or are you going to be the one that holds the property? You take those three into account, then you can really dive down into the niches. So, um, the first one is, are you going to sell it to somebody that is going to live there forever? There are a couple of different ways that you could do that. The most obvious one is a fix and flip. So if you're going to buy a property at, let's say, 70% of its future value minus whatever repair costs that you have. So for $100,000 house that needs $20,000 worth of repairs, you're going to buy it all in at 70,000, meaning you need 20 grand for repairs, so you'll be at 50,000 purchase. Um, that's what the numbers are. Same thing on $1 million house, right? On $1 million house, you would be all in at 700,000. But you have $200,000 worth of repairs, so if you buy it at 500,000, you've got room to make your $200,000 worth of repairs and still have 300,000 for all your fees, all your costs, and your profit. And so that's where that 70% rule comes in. It's ARV times 70% minus repairs equals max allowable offer. So if you're going to be selling to people that are going to live in the property, to end home buyers, end property owners, then that is a good rule of thumb. And typically you're going to do the 70% rule fix and flip. You can also work alongside with realtors and do novations. Um, and you can find houses that don't need a lot of work if they need to work at all. Um, but there's still people that are motivated to sell for whatever reason and they need something quick, and you're able to help them out with the listing process and they do novations. It's another way to do it without doing any of the work. And then there are just the possibilities that your wholesale properties could end up going as a to an in-home buyer as well. If you're buying a property, again, it's somebody that inherited a property, but it's a pretty house, right? It's rock solid. It's just sat there for 6 months or so, vacant, and they live out of state and they don't want anything to do with it, don't know anything about it. You're able to get a good enough discount. You can do it for sale by owner, Facebook, whatever it happens to be, right? And sell that to somebody that wants it to purchase it with a conventional loan or an FHA loan. Um, you're able to do that. It just depends on your state and the legalities, and also depends on how good your title company is, or your title attorney is, and how they can make those things happen. You get conventional loans, FHA loans, VA loans, things like that. On your buyer's side, it's a lot more disclosures and a lot more paperwork that has to be done, a lot more underwriting that has to be done, and so just more people involved to muddy up the situation. So it's typically, when you're doing a wholesale, it's not going to be to an end home buyer, but it's not to say that it's not possible. And your creative financing, your subject twos, your owner finances, things like that, that can absolutely be going to an end home buyer. You can do contractor deeds. You can do wrap mortgages. Um, you can take over a property that has a great interest rate of 3%. It was written in 2020. They got a little bit of equity in it. They just want to get out of it. They got a nice low payment. You take over those payments, and then you sell it to somebody that doesn't necessarily have the credit right now, but they've got money saved up, right? They've got everything except for the credit to qualify for a mortgage. And they've got 20 grand down, right? So you take the 20 grand as a deposit. You wrap their owner finance up around what you have subject to. You're paying $600 a month. They're paying $1,000 a month. You're making $400 a month in between. And then in 12, 18, 24, 36 months, whatever it is, they end up paying you off when they do qualify for the loan and they refinance. So that's also a possibility. Then you can get into the situation where you're selling to somebody who's not going to live in the property, selling to other investors. And almost always that is going to be some type of wholesale transaction. Not always, but for the most part, that's where a lot of your wholesales come in. You put a property under contract. You then have what's called equitable interest in that property, and then you sell that equitable interest to another investor, and they pay whatever your fee happens to be. You may have had a contract for a property for $150,000, and then you sold that contract for $180,000 to another investor. The 180 works for that customer. The 150 works for the seller, and for the work for you to find the seller and to find the buyer and to bring them together, you make the profit of the 30,000. It's just about that simple. You can do other things, right? You're fix and flips. You can do what we call prehabs. They're interesting and they're fun. And if you're in a market where people are super, super excited to do flips, but they're not necessarily experienced to do flips, a lot of these houses, especially the vacant houses and the houses that have been sitting vacant for a long time, when you walk into those properties, they're scary. They look like hoarder houses at the best. Could have walls falling down, could have drywall falling down, could have mold, could have wild animal feces, just about anything that you can think of in these houses, right? And sometimes the less experienced investors will get scared away from stuff like that. So sometimes if you are able to, especially if you're able to secure cash or very favorable short-term private money, you can do prehabs where you close on the property. You put your guys in there for the clean out crew. They clean the house out in 2 or 3 days, pay them 2-3 grand. Now that house is cleaned out and it's ready to go. And now investors all of a sudden, I showed a house one time, and it was packed. It was packed to the gills for sure. And I showed it to quite a few different people. And everybody said, man, this house isn't worth more than $40,000. This house isn't worth more than $40,000. And that's probably why I was able to buy it at $45,000 from the homeowner. because they probably showed it to a bunch of other people. And they're like, yeah, I can't pay any more than 30, 40 grand, right? But I paid the homeowner 45. We closed on the property, put $2,000 into the clean out. Took me 2 days. And guys came in, hauled everything away, put it out. I sent my cleaner in for another $200, and she just scrubbed everything down. So it was spick and span. It was still dirty. It was still nasty inside. It still needed renovations. It needed electrical and plumbing and drywall and all kinds of stuff. But it was clean. Showed it to a bunch of people. I sold it in 2 days for $85,000. I don't know, right? Having that vision of knowing that 2 days prior they could have bought it for 40, 45,000, 50,000, and then I spent 2,000, 2,500 bucks, and now they're buying it for 85. It is what it is, right? That's kind of one of the skill sets that you have as an investor, is being able to see through the shit, see through the muck, and see potential, right? If you can't see through it, then somebody that can see through it is going to be able to pay a little bit more for the property, and make things like that happen. But the last aspect of it is for holding a property, and that's any type of your rentals and your long-term holds. So that's a landlord or a buy and hold investor, short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, long-term rentals, commercial rentals. Man, I could go on and on and on with the different opportunities that you can actually hold real estate. The good thing with real estate in that aspect is that you get the appreciation. You also get the depreciation, owning it, the tax write-off and stuff like that. And then you get the passive income as well. So you can actually profit in 3 different ways from the real estate when you hold it. I don't think I need to go into the different tax advantages of it in this particular episode, as far as all the different benefits of owning real estate. But that's why people invest in real estate. That's why some of the investors here, you may have a lot of money but not a lot of time, like we were talking about last episode. They want to get into real estate because of all the advantages it has to do with owning it. I think that is one of the most common end goals outside of maybe lending, is owning real estate and holding the real estate. I think it's almost always somebody's end goal. People are starting out. A lot of people say, start out wholesaling so that I can build up some money and maybe do a flip or two just so that I can start building up a rental portfolio. It's the most common response. It's not a bad response. It's not a good response. It's just a response. And it's the way that a lot of people go about things. And it's fine. It's great. It's a good strategy. So it tends to be farther down the line for a lot of folks as far as holding real estate. And I think it has to do with not understanding the acquisition process completely. You don't need money to own real estate and hold the real estate and profit from the real estate from appreciation, depreciation, and cash flow. You just don't. But most people think that it takes money to do that, and that's why they are closer to either the fix and flips or the buy and hold, or the wholesales, right? People know that hard money's out there and they can absolutely raise almost all the funds there, and then find a private money or a bridge or a gap fund or a rich uncle or anything like that, right? To be able to fund their renovations, and they can do a fix and flip and not really do a lot of money out of pocket. And a wholesale, you don't have to bring up any money to the table because their buyer is going to be doing that for them. So that's why people gravitate towards those in the beginning. But you can do anything in the beginning, and there's benefits to all of them. Each one of them are going to have a little bit different time involvement. They're probably going to have different financial involvements. So it's all about what's good for you. But those are some good niches based on the 3 different ways that you're going to exit, whether you don't exit at all and you're the one who holds it, or who you're exiting to, right? Who you're selling to. But if you take those 3 things into account, that will really base you on, because your audience, right? What's your target audience? Is it yourself, or is it somebody else, or is it homeowners? Who is it? Once you decide that, then you can really pick a direction on how you want to attack that. Get really, really good at selling to other investors. If that's your end goal, then get really, really good at that. If your end goal is to sell to home buyers, then get really, really good at that, right? Because it's 2 different mindsets, 2 different people looking at those properties. Same thing with the holds, right? If you're going to be one that holding it, then get really, really good at the processes and the standard operating procedures and everything that go into place into holding properties. So that's it. Next week, we're gonna start diving into these niches a little bit more. But before we go into that, actually next week, we're going to talk about how to find deals, different marketing strategies, talk a little bit about on-market properties, but 98% of the stuff that I'll be talking about is off-market properties. So we'll probably talk for a week, maybe 2 weeks on off-market properties. Then we'll talk about selling deals, right? How to sell deals on the market, how to sell deals off the market. And then we'll start getting into these niches, right? Getting into these different wholesale strategies, different wholesale marketing, and different fix and flips, buy and holds, talk about Airbnbs, Verbos, furnish finders. We're going to go through a bunch of stuff on this channel if you guys stick around for a while. And I really appreciate it if you guys hit that subscribe button. If I bring in value to you guys, it definitely helps me out. And put some comments in there as well if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to insert a couple of topics here if you guys have any questions. More than happy to jump on the one-on-one call. See it there in the description below. If you have any questions, you just want to cut down and run over some stuff, completely free for now, and then take advantage of it when you can. Till then, hey, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. See you guys.